We acknowledge that this virtual event is taking place throughout the unceded territory and traditional lands of the Tongva, Kitch, Tataviam, Serrano, and Chumash peoples, who are the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We honor and pay respects to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility to lift the stories and cultures of the original inhabitants of LA County as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on the traditional lands of the Tongva, Kitch, Tataviam, Serrano, and Chumash peoples. And with that, I'd like to do a brief bio about our artist, Jacob Pratt. He is Dakota and Ojibway entrepreneur and artist who currently serves as the Los Angeles County Department of Arts and Culture, creative strategist, artist in residence. He's a powwow and hoop dancer who's also trained in contemporary dance and ballet. He's also an accomplished Native American flute player and has co-hosted TV series Wild Archaeology and has made other television appearances. He has a Master's of Science in Social Entrepreneurship from USC's Marshall School of Business and a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration from the First Nations University of Canada. And with that, I will turn this over to Jacob. So thank you and welcome.
Hello, thank you very much. Welcome everybody. Happy to be here and be a part of this. It's a really fun thing to do to kind of share everything today. So I'm just gonna share my screen for a bit of a presentation here. So yeah, entrepreneurship. It's a different kind of word. I can't remember where I heard it the first time, but it struck me the first time I heard it because it really explained who I was as a person, right? About myself, I was raised half between Canada and the US, half in the US, half in Canada. I am Dakota on my father's side and Ojibway on my mother's side. I also have some Norwegian and a little bit of other things in there, but mostly Native American. I grew up on a reservation and had a very typical Native American kid upbringing, which can include a lot of trauma and different kind of intergenerational traumas and racism and things like that. So I've dealt with a lot of things growing up. The one thing that really kind of I like to talk about is how growing up, I never considered myself an artist. Even going into university, I never considered myself an artist. But despite the fact I had been a dancer my entire life, I was a musician, and my artistic abilities were growing every year. But I never considered myself an artist, not because I wasn't an artist, but because those things that I did were simply just what we did in our culture. So in Native American culture, we kind of just are raised as artists, and you don't think of it, I could bead, an entire regalia, but I never considered that an art. I was a dancer that danced all the time, competed and things like that, but I never considered that an art. I started playing the Native American flute and was an accomplished musician by the time I went to university, but I didn't consider myself an artist simply because that was just what we did. Music and dance and storytelling was just a part of our culture. And that's how I was raised. But to me, that wasn't art. That was just a way of life. So I guess I was just always an artist without knowing it. My dance, I started before I can remember. I don't remember starting a dance. I'm a powwow dancer, as you can see on the one side here, right here. I'm a powwow dancer. I danced men's traditional, which is a storytelling dance. So it's all about telling a story while you dance. On the far side, you can see me dancing with hoops on my arms. It's called a hoop dance, and that one is a dance where I use up to 30 hoops to create different formations while I'm dancing. And that again is about storytelling, about growth and change and development through life. So that was all about storytelling. And eventually, as I became more and more sought after as a performer, I wanted to expand my dance. So I, started learning more about contemporary and trained in ballet. I trained with Jacques Soto, who was a principal dancer for the New York City Ballet for 20 years and was extremely, extremely informative and helped me learn a lot about ballet and contemporary dance. But also he kicked my butt because he was such a established dancer that what he considered a cool down or relaxing part end to a training was generally a super intense workout. But he taught me a lot, and I learned structure from him, structure of dance, and that took me into a lot of different kinds of things, including becoming a choreographer. And I've choreographed some very large performances. It's one of the performances I created not long after my ballet and contemporary training. I'll just play a little bit of this for you guys. Here we go. This piece was interesting because I was hired to choreograph it, but we also had to create the music with the three DJs you see in front of the stage I worked on this for about 8 months, working with the musicians and the producers to create this. I think it was 15 dancers or 18 dancers, hoop dancers and break dancers and traditional powwow dancers, and just a lot of different kinds of performers all doing something really great. This is one of my favorite parts because it was really a build up to the climax, and right around here is where the audience started to at one point you'll hear them get really loud. They had to turn up the music because they started to drown out the music. I'm actually kind of on the left side of the stage. We had a 6-year-old girl dance out, and she was the climax of our show. So you saw it, you didn't hear it, but you saw it. Yeah, so I did a lot of, not long after that, I also did a lot of professional touring as a contemporary artist. So doing, you can see in this image here in the center, I was touring on one of the shows that I did. It was a lot of fun on this one. I played a chief in a contemporary dance piece. I was telling a story of a battle in the Battle of 1812 when the U.S. and Canada were fighting. Actually, as a musician, I started playing. I was given my first Native American flute when I was 13 years old by one of my aunties, who passed away about 3 or 4 years later. Had a massive impact on me. I played for years and years and years, and it wasn't until I was, I think, about 28 when I decided to finally when I decided I was finally an artist in my flute playing. and decided to make my first album called Eagle Calls. You'll see on the bottom left here. That one actually won me Best Flute Album for the Aboriginal People's Choice Music Award in Canada, which was great because it was my first album ever, and I won an award for it. So that was pretty impactful on my music. But I still just play for myself mostly. I also became, as my performance career, both music and dance, grew and grew and grew. I started getting more and more requests and involved in theater and then film and television. See on the left side, that's me, host of a TV series called Wild Archaeology, where we traveled all over Canada, producing, being involved in archaeological excavations that were exploring the history of Indigenous people throughout North America. And that was awesome because I learned so much about history, and I excavated some amazing things, some prehistoric animals. I excavated arrowheads and harpoon heads, and I just learned so much through this experience. And it was I spent four years every summer just traveling throughout Canada and going to different archaeological sites. And then on the right side, you'll see me in a costume for Outlander. I was a principal actor in Outlander. So that was a lot of fun. They flew me out to Scotland for that. As my career in acting grew, I started to become more of a filmmaker than the actor, because I started to see the fact that a lot of the stories that I wanted to tell weren't being told. And the best way for me to help make those stories be heard was to actually make them myself. And as a filmmaker, I've created a lot of different things. I'll share this website with everybody. So this is my business website. So I started to create a lot of different kinds of content. This is.
Hi, my name is Jacob Pratt. Welcome to Lands Wandered
Can you hear it?
series, where we
Yes,
explore
we do. We
the
can.
most
Okay.
amazing places across North America. And today we're exploring Vancouver and Los Angeles, Whistler, British Columbia, Catalina Island, the southeast deserts of California.
This series is a web series that was commissioned by a TV station in Canada called Aboriginal People's Television Network. And they actually requested I host it because I have experience hosting, and they like me a lot, and I didn't want to do it, but that's what they requested, and our funding was dependent on that. And this piece I actually created as part of my thesis project in university on how to diversify the entertainment industry. How do you diversify and bring diversity to the entertainment industry? And it came down to Indigenous people or people of color creating their own content, being the leaders of their own pieces, the leaders of their own stories, and not non-ethnic people taking their stories away from them and producing them for profit. So like, how does ethnic people create diversity by creating their own content? And that was the thesis, and this project came out of it. And by the time I was done my master's degree, this was being produced. So it was kind of interesting how that all worked out. But like I said, it's all about telling the stories, and this was, everybody gets a kick out of this part. But the whole purpose was about telling stories from an Indigenous perspective, and that was what it was all about. I also produced some content as a filmmaker for Disney. This piece actually won a Clio Award, which is an advertising or a commercial awards here in the US, and it won a bronze.
Yajo.
My name is Aisha. I'm Dakota from the Sistenwapton Sioux tribe, and I create videos to help preserve my language. I enjoy making videos because it's a modern way to tell stories. My language is what ties me to my ancestors, my home, my elders. Things I use to make my videos are my phone. I make sure I have a story, get my siblings to help me, and the Dakota language. Dakota umaspe watching. I try and make my videos real stay so people enjoy watching them. Of them it's vital for young people like me to learn their language because without us, it can't survive. Eat that. I use my voice to help preserve my language.
So that was one of the 3 pieces we created as filmmakers for Disney Channel. We did 3 others, and it won an award. So that was really exciting as a filmmaker. So yeah, as you can see, my career as an artist has changed a lot over the years. I was a dancer, a traditional style dancer, become contemporary and ballet dancer, and I was a musician, and that all became me becoming an actor, which became me becoming a producer and a director. And currently, in 2 weeks, I go to Canada where I'm directing a film for the rest of July. And my artistic career has changed a lot over the years. But when people ask me, well, what kind of artist are you? My answer is never I'm a filmmaker, I'm a dancer, I'm a musician. My answer is always I'm a storyteller. That's my art form. I tell stories, whether I tell stories through dance, whether I tell stories through music or film or whatever kind of piece I choose. Another story that I'm working on is an immersive experience for LA County, but all of these things are done as a storyteller. So my medium has always been about telling stories, and it has taken me through a lot of different kinds of mediums of telling those stories, physically and technically. That's where my career has taken me. But also, my education is in business. Not a lot of people think as artists that what you need to do is go to business school. You usually go to go to art school, which while I was at school, all my art teachers always said I should be in the fine arts department, and every elective I had was the arts class. But for me, it was really important to get a business education because it really helped me. It helped me as an artist. And this is where the entrepreneurship comes in. So everybody that's an artist understands and knows what it's like to be considered a starving artist. You're an artist, you're creating whatever you're creating, and you're struggling to find the funds to do it and to support yourself on that. And that's the hard part. But when you combine business and art, that you can alleviate that pressure. So my first business was a performance and events company. My first business was called Wambadi Performance and Events. And what we did is different organizations, companies, nonprofits, government agencies, and even just individuals would hire us to do performances, to tell stories, to create youth events, to do a whole range of different kind of content. And basically our motto was like, if you need it and we don't do it, we'll create it so that we can do it for you. So we did just about everything. And this is how I worked my way through college. My undergraduate degree, I spent starting and running my first business. And on, that was our logo, the Wambadi. On the far right, you can see one of the dancers. We had a lot of young dancers as well, not just adults. And on the bottom left, you can see me holding like this big glass trophy because just as I graduated, I was given a National Youth Entrepreneur of the Year award, which was really great in 2016. So that's was the start of my entrepreneurship, because I combined my education, my business education, with my arts, which became a very successful business and allowed me to not be a starving artist, but to be a very successful artist going through university, where I didn't have to work for anybody. I didn't have to go get a job at like a McDonald's to make ends meet. You know, I didn't have to go find a job anywhere, because I was consistently working. And even when I wasn't working, I had a whole company of people that were working as well. So I remember one time it was great because I went from Canada, came down to California, and I spent a day on the beach, but I made $2,000 that day because my team was back home working still. So there's ways to still be successful and be a successful artist, but also provide a living for yourself and your family. And currently what I'm doing right now is, while I was going to school, I actually interned at Disney and in Disney Live Entertainment, which was great because I learned a lot working with them in how to work on a much higher scale level. You know, they work in the millions of dollars, and I went from working in $1,500 to $2,500 to now I don't work in the $1 million ranges, but I do work in the, you know, 6-figure ranges now. And a lot of that was impacted by Disney. I'm also, like was said, I am currently a LA County creative strategist, where I'm working on with the Los Angeles Native American Indian Commission and the Department of Arts and Culture, and to addressing how to improve the states of erasure of Indigenous history in LA County and the invisibility of Indigenous people in LA County, because LA County has the highest population of Native American people in any urban center anywhere in the world. Yet a lot of people don't understand that Native American people are in fact here. So what we are trying to accomplish is get rid of the fact that people don't know we're here, and just say, oh yeah, Native American people are here, and stop erasing the history of Native American people, because there are a lot of traditional villages and a lot of history of a lot of Indigenous people that have impacted LA County. So that's part of what I'm doing. I'm also running my own company, Dakota and Entertainment, which is, you know, I just had showed you a couple of the pieces that we have produced, say for Disney and for that Canadian broadcaster. It's actually airing down here on FNX, which is a public broadcast channel. And all these things are the things that I'm doing, including this summer we're filming a film in Canada, and none of that would have been possible as an artist. Like I couldn't have, you know, been making this film. I couldn't have made this Disney stuff. I couldn't have done all the things that I've done without having an understanding of business and being able to find a way to merge the two in a way that allowed me to be successful at it. You know, when I started as a, you know, before I started my business undergraduate, I remember people asking me to go and perform and then giving me $50. They're like, here's $50. Thank you for your performance. You know, and that was a big deal to me. But, you know, as I went through my business degree, I was able to understand the fact that I was literally like almost giving away my talents. You know, I was giving away the skills and everything for almost for free. You know, $50, you know, is not even a tank of gas these days. It's like I could fill my truck up by about half a tank right now. You know, $50 doesn't do much. But it was through my education in business that allowed me to learn how to structure a business, learn how to invoice, learn how to pitch ideas. And now just one project I'm working on where I created the project and I brought everything together. You know, I have a budget of $321,000, you know, so I went from somebody giving me $50 to working well into the 6-figure range. And that wouldn't have been possible without a business degree. I'm going to stop this now. And so when I approach any project, there's some very specific things that I do. And I think this is important for a lot of artists to start to understand, that in order to be successful, you don't have to have this. Some artists are very successful without this kind of business understanding. But for me, it has helped a great deal because nobody was helping me make this happen. I had to make it all happen myself. So there's kind of a process I go through, which I think is really important for a lot of artists to understand. It comes with a lot of work, and you need to practice it. How do you develop a project, pitch a project, fund a project, and then produce a project? There's very specific things. So, and there's some specific things I make sure I know at the very early stages of every project. I have something in my mind, some project that I want to create. First thing I want to know is, what story do I want to tell? That's the first question I want to ask. And for any artist, you should be passionate about the stories that you're wanting to tell. You should be passionate about the projects you're creating. Not only because you like it, but it's because it's something you want to see. I want to create this because this is something I want to see myself. And maybe it's something that isn't being done, a story that's not being told, a piece that hasn't been created yet. I think it's important to think of it like that, but also, don't let that stop you too, because sometimes a lot of artists you're inspired by other artists. So don't be afraid to do something that somebody's already done. I had somebody ask me about that recently. She didn't want to create something because somebody had already done it. I was like, have you ever watched any movies lately? And she was like, yeah. I was like, well, every single movie that we've been seeing and that people love right now is a remake of another movie. It too, those are remakes. Almost every movie that we're watching these days is a remake of another movie. I mean, how many Spider-Mans do we have? We have I think we have 3 different Spider-Mans, all different stories, and now they combine them all. But don't be afraid to retell a story if you think you can tell it differently or with a fresh perspective. Another thing I always take in consideration is knowing my audience, who's going to be watching it. So, and I don't just say, oh, somebody like that, I want this kind of person. No, I need to know specifics. I need to know how old they are. What is the race that is going to be watching it? What is their orientation? What is their socioeconomic status? Standing, can they pay $500 to come and see this? Or should it be something that's free? Understanding all the demographics of your audience is really, really important to understand. Not only for yourself, so that when you're creating it, it's something that they enjoy, but also for your funders. Knowing your funders is just as important as well, because they're the ones that are going to fund it. You know what I mean? So who's funding it and what do they have available? And if this is my audience, if I'm looking at 12-year-olds, 7 to 12-year-olds, I'm not going to somebody that works with, adults. I got to go somebody that works with 7 and 12-year-olds. If I'm making something for 12-year-olds, or adults, I'm not going to Disney Junior. You got to be aware of the kind of organizations that are going to fund your projects. So knowing your funders and different funders and what kind of things they fund is super important, because that'll dictate the kind of people you're addressing and going to. Another thing I want to always be aware of is what kind of impact do I want to have on my audience? So do I want to affect them? Do I want to energize them? Do I want to motivate them? Do I want to address a social issue? What kind of impact are you looking for in both your audience, but also your funder? What kind of impact are your funders looking for? And then what kind of reach? How are you getting it to them? Are they coming to you? And how are you making sure that they have access to the content that they need to be able to find you? So there's a lot of different kinds of things like that that I think are really important. And when I do a pitch, when I create something and I identify my audience, I identify potential funders, I look at, you know, applications and what their funding process is. You know, I have a template that is the basis of how I do things. You know, each one of these things I write these pitches the same way I do a business plan. So basically every one of my project pitches is also a business plan. You know, I take the same process I would for helping a friend start a business as I would helping or trying to bring in funding for a project. And but then I take it a step further and I create demonstrations, like artistic demonstrations of the projects. So like when I got, you know, the funding for this film, I provided examples of what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what it's going to sound like. So I do demonstrations, provide demonstrations of the potential project that I'm doing, because you can read everything you need about it, but unless you understand the feeling of it, you're not really going to be able to pitch it effectively to a potential funder. So where am I on time? I'm trying to stay within time right now. So those are some of the things that I would consider when I'm going into a project and looking for funding. And, you know, it's important to also, when you're building a project, is I don't do anything by myself. I don't make a film. I don't create social media content. I don't make a performance. I don't do an immersive experience. I don't make my music without some kind of inspiration and some kind of contribution from other artists. I mean, some artists do. I mean, a visual artist who's doing a painting, maybe that's a completely solo project. But for me, my arts are never just me. You know, if it's a performance, I bring other people in. So building an effective team and a team that works well together is really crucial to any one of my projects. You know, I am constantly working on my network, creating connections with different people and fostering friendships and relationships with people that I know are important people in future projects. You know, so, you know, one of my best friends, he's never been on screen, but he's an essential part of every film project I've ever worked on. And, you know, so he's a go-to for editing and sound and things like that. And somebody I met when I was 18 years old on a youth project is now my director of photography for the film that I'm going into. You know, so fostering those kinds of relationships is really crucial, and don't lose contact with certain people, because, you know, you can create a artistic collaboration with a lot of different people in the future, you know. And, you know, honestly, a lot of artists are just really fun people to be around anyways. And, you know, some of my best friends are just really, really great artists that I like to have around no matter what. Where am I? I'm at 6:37. I guess I can start to take some questions. Do I just look at I'll just look at the chat. Oh geez, there's a lot on here. Can Mr. Pratt kindly share sound from? Oh yeah, sorry about that, about the sound thing. Jacob share the audio. Has impressive resume. Thank you, I appreciate that. Oh, there's some Outlander fans. It is a really great show. I'm in season 4, and I put a musket to what's his name? The main character, put a musket to his face, and we kind of hold him down and manhandle him a little bit. But I'll have to say he's an awesome guy, and everybody on the Outlander team is just awesome. And, you know, they're great people to be around.
I
Thank
have
you.
one for you, Jacob. It's
Sure.
by Eleanor. She says that this is what she says. I am a cultural artist. The majority of our performances are for people of color, community groups with limited budgets, and the events are free to the public. It's hard to raise our rates past a certain threshold and still be there for our community. Do you have advice as to how to make community-centered cultural performance more sustainable and profitable? We are
Mhm.
an LLC, not a nonprofit.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? So in business, you have to understand your audience, right? It's really, really important to understand your audience. And I agree, I've experienced the same thing as well. There's a certain point where, you know, you're, if that's your base, so it's a cultural group, it's a cultural group of people, and there's only so much funding available, and you're kind of tapping out, right? You're plateauing on the amount that you could earn from that group, and you don't want to go any higher, because then you'll kind of start to hurt them rather than benefiting them. So understand where you're coming from. So I think important part now would be not to be trying to figure out how to make money off your primary audience, but how do you bring in money from somewhere else that will help support that work, and maybe even reduce that cost to those people, but increase your, so there's potential for third party funding, right? So I think, I'm not sure what your genre is or what your audience is or anything like that, or specifics, but in generally from what I experienced, I was doing the same kind of thing. You know, we're doing a lot of community involvement. And when we're doing projects for, say, children in foster care, I can't charge the children in foster care, but the government has a lot of money. So if you can access the money from governing bodies or other nonprofit organizations to fund projects, to then bring that money down to your core audience, that is how you want to do that. And there's different ways. Even as an LLC, you can access nonprofit funding if you have a third party kind of go through. So if you have a nonprofit partner, you can apply for money. Like the money comes to the nonprofit and flows through to you where you do it. And generally a nonprofit will take about a 10% cut for managing that. But there's ways to get grants and things, and organizations can donate to a project, basically sponsoring it to help serve who you're trying to serve. So there's funding out there, but it's a matter of finding it and having a partner that will allow you to run funds through them, a nonprofit, you know. And there's a lot of organizations that do that. There's even some organizations that are nonprofits, and their only purpose is to be that middle person, that middle organization to help you. Because a lot of, even say like you were getting funded through Disney was funding you to do some stuff, but they don't fund LLCs. But what they will do is they'll fund a nonprofit that will then the funding can go through the nonprofit into the LLC. So there's ways of doing that kind of work. And it'd just be a matter of identifying potential funders that would sponsor and fund a project that you're working on to serve your audience. I hope that's clear.
Thank you, Jacob. We also have more questions in our Q&A. One question is, how can I contact you? I'm a fellow storyteller, and I agree with a lot of stuff you're talking about.
I think the best way would be through my website, so scodanentertainment.com. We have a contact sheet in there, and you could just get anything in there, and we can get back to you.
Thank you. And I know Katrina had that link up, so she'll most likely share. So thank you, Katrina. And another person asked, can you run down your pre-production in Canada film? And how did you get funding?
So the first step is identifying the funder, right? So with that Canada project,
I identified APTN as a potential funder. And so for most like TV stations and stuff like that, they do put out RFPs, which is a request for proposals. And I looked at their RFPs and what they were wanting. And one thing that they wanted was a web series, and it had a dollar amount. And so then I took that and I called their production team. So they're what's their titles? Just producers that kind of handle the incoming projects. And I called them, I talked to them first, and I'm like, hey, I have this idea. Is this something you would be interested in? And they would say yes, no. And, you know, I went through about 5 potential projects before the 5th one was finally something they're interested in. But I pitched them and ran 5 ideas past them. And they're like, no, this one we already have. This one we've already produced. We have one that's in production right now that's just like this. We just funded something like this one. And then the last one, the 5th one, they're like, oh, that sounds very interesting. Yeah, we're interested. And then I just went through their entire application process. And unfortunately, you're going to do a lot of work with no guarantee that it's ever going to get funded. So you got to really think carefully about the projects you're working on, because, you know, I'm working on a project that we have $321,000. But, you know, I did about a year's worth of work developing it before ever applying for our first amount. And we didn't know if it was going to get funded or not. Luckily enough, we got everything we asked for. But sometimes it's just a shot in the dark. You got to do your research. You got to know your audience. You got to know your funder, and you got to work to create the content that you want. And just knowing your funder. That's the key, like knowing your funder, calling them, having conversations with them, and seeing if that's your project is something that they're interested in at all. And once you get into that, then you can really start, like that's not even pre-production, that's development. Once you get past that and you can get the funding, then you're in development and getting ready for the project, right? That's where you go into pre-production, I'm sorry. So just in the development is a lot of work, and there's no guarantee you're doing it for anything. You just got to hope that the projects you're developing are, you know, good enough that your potential funders are going to fund it. And I think that all comes down to practice as well. Yeah, just pre-production is, you know, after you get the funding. And pre-production is, you know, is a lot of fun because you have the funding. It's the development that's the hard part, because you do a lot of work without knowing if you're going to actually get this money to make this or not. So sometimes you just got to trust in your abilities and as an artist and as a storyteller to really just work hard to get it done. And that's where your passion comes in, because, you know, a grade B level idea with passion behind it is better than a grade A idea with no passion. So you got to be able to really be passionate about your projects, and, you know, to push them and work hard at making them.
We still have questions, so thank you for Jacob for answering that. I'm sure a lot of people are interested in funding. The next question is by David. He says, thank you, Jacob. How do you balance collaborating with other Aboriginal tribes and representing them accurately and within the protocol of their history and traditions? That's a great
That's
question.
a really good question. Well, first and foremost, if it's your tribe, your people, you still have a responsibility. You have a responsibility of representing your people in the best way you can. And knowing that the story, so I always go into everything that if I'm telling a story of my people, I need to know that anything I make, when it goes home, people are going to be proud of what I've done. That's my number one. If it's my story. If it's not my story, a story from another people, you can't go and tell their story for them. You have to they have to be an active participant, not just somebody you consult with, but they have to be actively involved in the storytelling process. Okay, you can't exclude them from it. You can't even just consult with them, and that's been one of the major problems for years and years, is that people are taking these stories and just running with it, and that's the problem. That's why we see misrepresentation. That's why we see, it's almost like just stealing those stories and taking off with it. So being actively involved with the people whose story you're telling, for example, I'm working on a project right now with a group. Shaden, stop. Sorry. I'm working with a group of ladies who are basket weavers. I'm not a basket weaver. I can't tell their story. So when I'm approaching a project from a nation or a group of people who I want to share their story, but I can't take that story away from them. This is their story, and you need to work with them and have them involved with it as much as possible so that they know that their story is being told and true and not being misrepresented. And that can be hard. It takes a lot of work, but that's where the authenticity comes from. It's only authentic if the voices telling it are authentic. Without that, it can easily become misrepresentation, or when they see it, they're like, that's not what we talked about. That's not what we said. Like, that has nothing to do with what we were talking about. That's where you would see the problem. So having somebody very close to you that is representative of that community and that story.
Thank you, Jacob. We have another question. It's by Betty, who's an Outlander fan. How was working in Outlander? How knowledgeable was the production when it came to this chapter in the books? Were all actors playing American Indian or Alaska Native?
Good question. Yeah, all of the actors that I worked with that were playing Native American characters, and even some of my friends who were in the film or in the series as well, are all Native American. I can say that, and they've done a really good job at making sure that the characters that are Native American are represented by Native American people. There probably are some situations where there might be fake Native Americans claiming Native American ancestry just to get a role. I can't say for sure if that's happening, but it tends to happen a lot in the industry. But everybody I know that I worked with was Native American. They were Cree, they were Blackfoot, Dakota and Ojibway, and they did a really good job. And the whole team there were so professional. They're extremely professional and very, very welcoming. And I can honestly say that I sincerely enjoyed my time on Outlander. Sorry, this is my son. He just woke up and he is attached to my hip.
Next question. And hello, little one. He's adorable.
He's a little out of it.
So our next question is, let's see. Someone had asked about your work regarding the LA County Fair. I'm not sure if that's the correct question or if it's LA County, the Department of Arts and Culture that they may be asking.
Yeah, my work, I've never done anything with a county fair. I've gone to it and enjoyed it. I saw Boys to Men when I went there once. But my work with LA County, it was a competitive process to get the job. It's a 1-year contract. And it is ran by the LA County Department of Arts and Culture, but it's in partnership with the Los Angeles City County Indian Commission. And they're a group of indigenous professionals and leaders within the LA County area. But yeah, so it's a really great program because LA County is hiring creative strategists for a lot of different departments. And they go in and work with the department and create different basically first is about research, identifying areas of concern and creating creative strategies to address certain kinds of things. So I spent my first 3 months in the position really just kind of digging deep into Indigenous issues in LA County. And, the most prevalent ones becoming, erasure of Indigenous history and invisibility of Indigenous people in LA County. So the goal was to develop ways to address those two major issues. And we come up with two attempts to tackle those issues. With invisibility, we want to create an immersive experience through video and content creation, projection mapping that will allow us to share Indigenous history and stories with LA County. And the other one is creating an online resource and community that will support Indigenous creatives. So that's kind of the work I'm doing right now with LA County. Kind of a little bit slow right now just because I'm about to leave to go make a film.
Thank you, Jacob. We have a few more questions. One person would like to know, what is your dream project? And that's a pretty big question.
Dream project. My dream project, if I was to have anything, like right now, I would like to work with Taika Waititi on Star Wars, on his Star Wars film. That would be my ultimate right now, would be to be Taika Waititi's, I don't know, assistant director or something, anything on his new Star Wars films when they do. I think that would be my dream right now. If it's something by myself, it would to make my first feature film, like full length feature film that could be shown on Netflix or Disney Plus. Those would be my goals, like my dream jobs right now.
That's amazing. I'm hoping that in the future we can say at the American Indian Resource Center that we knew you before you worked with all that.
Or I'll just fizzle out and you'll not hear from me again.
No, it looks like you're going really, really far. So I think this is going to be our last question, and it looks like
Okay.
It could be from a parent. They say that they have, I believe, an 18-year-old artist who does digital art, creates detailed fantasy stories, and creates fantastical worlds and creatures. And she just graduated and is completely tapped out for further schooling. Are there suggestions that you have for moving forward?
Ooh, that's a big one. See, the beautiful thing is her possibilities at this point are anything, literally anything. She has infinite number of possibilities. The problem with that is she also has infinite number of possibilities, and sorting through where she could go is really the hard part, but also the adventure, right? If she's not interested in schooling, I guess the next step would just be networking, finding people to be involved with, to learn from, and to find just what she really wants to do. She loves animation and that kind of work. I think it would really be about finding her community, and the people that she wants to work with, and things that inspire her to, and that I guarantee will potentially lead her to a track where she will at one point be like, hey, this is what I need, this is what I want. And then maybe she'll go back to school, maybe she'll find work, but it's a really exciting time and a really scary time, I'm sure. I remember being in the same place. I was I don't know what I'm gonna do, so I just kind of floated for a few years, and then I was like, I need business school. And then my career kind of started to figure itself out. But I think let her explore, let her try things, and find her community. That's going to be the thing, and let her explore some technology. There's a lot of amazing things that are happening in the tech world, especially for creatives and artists, like projection mapping, especially if she's in that kind of thing, like animation, have her look into Unreal Engine and stuff like that, because there's so much going on. It'd be really cool to be where she is, to start exploring some of these new technologies that can really be the future of her career.
Thank you, Jacob. So we actually have a few more questions, but I think our time is limited. Are there any last words that you'd like to share with our audience?
I guess just thank you for showing up and being a part of this. It's you guys have some amazing questions, and you're really testing me here. So, but that's a lot of fun. I appreciate it, and I hope you guys all do great things. And you know, if you guys have an idea or a project and you'll want to hire me, like reach out. I'm always available for interesting idea and concept.
Well, thank you, Jacob, for taking your time and joining us. And thank you to our audience for also joining us and asking these amazing questions and being engaged in our program. And thank you to Katrina, our moderator. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.